Well, I am going to call the October 20th, 2025 Cedarburg School Board budget hearing to order. So this is the 2025-26 school year budget hearing of the Cedarburg School Board and is a public hearing. Prior notices have been placed in the district and additional copies were forwarded to the News Graphic and Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, this evening, the majority of our meeting is a presentation on the 25-26 budget proposal, and Kim here is ready to give us all the great news.
Well, thank you and welcome to the 25-26 annual budget hearing. My name is, the one person who I don't know, my name is Kim Zabel and I'm the Director of Business Services. Tonight we'll be reviewing last year's financial performance as well as looking ahead to the 25-26 school year. I have a short presentation and then I'll leave time at the end for questions. So the budget development process is really a year-long process starting in December of every year. In December, we establish our major budget assumptions such as enrollment projections, the 5-year forecast, and we take a look at the status of our long-range capital plan. In January, we review our staffing. We look at class section needs as a result of those enrollment projections. We review course requests, and then we review departmental needs. By June, we have a preliminary budget for the board to approve so that we can start spending out of on July 1st, which is the start of our fiscal year. We don't actually approve a final budget until now in October, after we complete the third Friday count and receive our health insurance renewal in September, and after the state provides us with final revenue figures such as equalization aid. The process culminates in the budget hearing, which is what we have tonight, and then the approval of the final original budget and tax levy, which is what we're going to do on Wednesday. As we go throughout the year, then, we'll monitor this budget and adjust it accordingly before we close the books in summer of 2026. Before getting into 25-26, let's take a look back at this last year. This last year, we had a surplus of $31,772.60, resulting in an addition to the fund balance. If you'll remember, we did a lot of work last year to balance the budget. Before I got here, the team had to make some significant cuts to expenditures prior to June, and then after I arrived, we faced a $1 million health insurance increase. We did a lot of work to get a balanced budget this last year, and we ended the year with a slight surplus. The fund balance is now over $10 million, or it was before, but now it's $10,279,151, which is 25% of our general fund expenditures. It's important to have a healthy fund balance, not only to cover emergency expenditures, but also to reduce our reliance on short-term borrowing. We are short-term borrowing again this year. We'll borrow about $1.5 million from November to April, which will help us cover our expenses in those low revenue months before we get aid and taxes in December, and the bulk of our taxes in January and February. So that was the balance of the general fund and Fund 27. Together, those combined have revenues and expenditures around $40 million each year. But our accounting system in school districts has a number of other different additional funds which segregate spending for other specific purposes. So we'll quickly review those other much smaller funds so that you are provided with a recap of the district as a whole. So let's start off with Fund 21. So Fund 21 is our fundraising account, and this is where we keep all of the donations and expenses related to those donations. You'll see in Fund 21 athletics and co-curricular donations. You'll see trips, scholarships, all sorts of those extra things that people donate for, and we specifically have additional expenses for. I want to point out one number in particular on this slide, which is that fund revenue in Fund 21, $975,000 That means that the district, the community, the parents, the grandparents, the neighbors donated almost $1 million this last year to our students. And so I just want to take a moment to say thank you for your financial support of our district's students and their projects as they went about last year. Moving on is Fund 38 and Fund 39. Those are our debt service funds. Fund 38 is our non-referendum energy efficiency fund, and Fund 39 is our referendum-approved debt service fund. The revenue in those funds is interest and tax levy collections, and the expenses are the debt payments for those long-term bonds and notes. Fund 46 and 49 are capital projects funds. We'll talk about Fund 46 more in detail later, but this year just note that Fund 46 had a surplus balance, and it's a segregated fund for long-term planning of capital improvements. Fund 50 is our food service fund. All of the revenue for food service, such as lunch payments and federal revenue, go into this fund, and the expenses are food, of course. We have to buy the food to feed the students, the labor to make it, and the equipment for the lunch and breakfast programs. Fund 73 is our retirement trust fund. This is our OPEB fund, which OPEB stands for Other Post-Employment Benefits. The revenue in this fund is the district and employee benefit payments, and the expenses are those monthly retiree benefit payments. Now, the retirees in those group are in a grandfathered closed group. New employees do not receive retirement benefits outside of the Wisconsin retirement system, but there is a grandfathered group who will continue to receive benefits for about the next 10 years. Fund 80, or Funds 82, 83, and 84, are our community service funds. Out of the community service fund, we pay the SRO. We partially pay the crossing guards out of that fund, a portion of the public relations department, and then the CPAC, the district's performing arts center, a portion of that as well. Okay. So that's a look at the 24-25 ending balances. Now let's move forward to talk about the 25-26 budget, which was started in July and is the budget the board will be voting on Wednesday. Overall, first and foremost, I'm happy to report that the budget is balanced. Okay, we do have our revenues matching our expenditures, each with a total of $40,998,979. And 0 cents, we rounded this year. One major factor in that revenue calculation is enrollment. Membership, which is the full-time resident public school enrollment, has increased this year by 5 students, and we'll look at how membership impacts revenue in just a little bit. On the expenditure side, the largest portion of our budget is in staff compensation. This budget includes increases between 2% to 3.84% for all staff. The aggregate teacher group increase is 3.13%, and all other groups received 3%, which is above this year's CPI. Also included in this budget is a deposit of $500,000 into our long-range capital planning fund, with an expected year-end balance of over $1.9 million. And finally, this year is the first year of the state's 25-27 biennium budget. And inside of that budget, there were a few new items that were adjusted for the first time in a long time this year to help increase revenues. These new items were largely in the form of special education aids and will provide the district an estimated additional $573,000. Now that we've reviewed the overall budget, let's take a look at the biggest driver of our revenue, which is the state-imposed revenue limit formula. This controls the amount of local tax dollars and state aid that we receive. The revenue limit formula is calculated like this. And I know we go over this every year, but I'll keep saying it again and again. The revenue limit formula is the membership, which is the public school resident students in our district, multiplied by a set per pupil amount. That amount this year is $11,682. And then added to that are exemptions and deductions. They could be small exemptions, like a transfer of a special education pupil, or larger exemptions or deductions, like voucher school students. You may hear about vouchers in the news, and this is where vouchers come into the revenue limit formula in that exemptions place. In our school district, vouchers total approximately $717,000 of our revenue limit formula. So then we take that revenue limit from the total revenue limit, we go membership times the set per pupil dollar amount plus exemptions, and that equals our total revenue limit, okay? And we reduce that by the amount of aid that the state gives us. So then on October 15th, the state says, here's how much aid you get, Cedarburg. And as a result of that, then we know how much to levy, okay? So we'll go into that a little bit more, but this is the general formula. The general fund revenue limit is projected to increase by 1.196 million, or 3%. This increase is primarily driven by a $325 per pupil increase from the state and our own increase in membership. Also included is an increase of $141,000 to the voucher school exemption to bring voucher payments to $117,000 or $717,000. Okay. One of the key variables that positively impacted our revenue limit increase is our enrollment, which has increased for the third consecutive year. And I know I'm using these concepts interchangeably. I want to make sure everyone understands. Our membership is our total FTE, or full-time equivalency, of all residents, public school residents living in our district. Our enrollment, or our head count, is the number that Dr. Clark typically uses when he talks about space and capacity and number of students we serve, because that includes all of the students that are in our buildings, including open enrollment students as well. So our membership and our enrollment actually buck the statewide trend. We are an increasing enrollment school district statewide overall. Enrollment is decreasing, but for the last 3 years we've been increasing. Our membership is up by 5 to a total of 2,988 students, and our head count, which is again all of the students that we serve in our buildings, is up by 14 to make it 3,122 students. And we've been monitoring that enrollment trend for the last few years. Last year, our enrollment study showed that our enrollment is expected to remain relatively stable. And we've taken action, like the elementary school border change, to manage building capacity for all of those expected upcoming home sites. Okay, so let's break that formula down just a little bit further. We know that the revenue limit authority is calculated by taking the membership times our set per pupil amount plus those exemptions. But how is that total revenue limit funded? Well, like we saw, it's split between tax levy and general aid. For us, the tax levy pays for 57% of that, and the aid pays for 43% of that. It's important to understand that an increase in the general aid results in a decrease of the portion paid by local taxes, not new revenue for the district. So imagine that revenue limit authority equation creating the big box, the outline of those two colors, and then the general aid coming in and just making the tax levy box bigger or smaller. So in addition to the equalization aid formula, or in addition to our equalization aid, would just mean reduction of the tax levy. You may also hear about that lately, because in the 25-27 biennium budget, the state biennium budget did not include any additional allocation for general aid, which doesn't mean that everyone gets the same aid they got last year. It means that the amount that the state is funding it stays the same, but it gets reallocated and redistributed every year. This year, we are a part of only 25-ish% of students who have an increase in our aid. We have a slight increase in our general aid. Based on our position in the aid formula, though, and our expected budget for the year, I expect that next year our aid will decrease. We'll go over that more when we look at the 5-year forecast, and I have a few more numbers, because aid for next year is variable. It's based on our enrollment and everyone else's budget this year as well, so across the state. So we'll get those numbers in and we'll start calculating that. But that's just something to note for next year. As a result of this formula up here on the screen, the total tax levy proposed for the calendar year is $27,803,483, which is up 7% from the previous year. And you can see how it's broken down between the general fund, the debt service funds, and the community service fund. So the total tax levy is directly tied to the community's overall property value, and we're seeing a continuation of the positive trend with property values having risen steadily since 2014 and again having risen again by 11.48% this year. A larger tax base is beneficial because all else being equal, it helps reduce the mill rate. Okay? If we dig into the composition of these property values, you can see that over 90% of our tax base resides in the city and towns of Cedarburg, with all 6 municipalities contributing to that overall 11.4% growth, but differently. Some were above the average 11.4%, some were below it. Okay, some were as high as 15% growth, and some were 8% growth, for example. The significant growth in our tax base is primarily driven by 2 key sources: valuation increases on existing properties and new construction. So new construction is particularly beneficial because it grows the tax base and increases the number of taxpayers that are splitting that tax bill. This year, 2/3 of the city of Cedarburg is 2/3 of the growth in the city of Cedarburg is new construction, and about 10% of the growth in the town of Cedarburg is net new construction. Okay. Because of the strong growth in the property values that we just reviewed, we have a resulting proposed tax levy rate of $6.25, which is a decrease of 3.8%. The proposed rate of $6.25 is lower than last year's $6.50 and well below last year's statewide average of $7.09. The rate does include the required debt payments for the $59.8 million referendum approved by the community in 2018 as well. Okay, so what does that rate actually mean for the average homeowner? This slide illustrates how your individual school levy is calculated using your property's fair market value and the new proposed levy rate of $6.25. Now, don't do this math, it won't actually work out because I don't have a 2026 tax bill yet. They haven't been printed. But if you take your home's fair market value, multiply that by that school levy rate, and you reduce that by the school levy tax credit, which gets calculated, distributed, and collected by the county. We don't have anything to do with that, and we also don't get those funds. But that lowers that school levy line on the line of your tax bill. Okay. Here I've put it all together to show you the tax levy breakdown and the comparison to the prior year in each area. On the bottom is where you'll see that the total allowable limited revenue increased by 1.1 million, almost 1.2 million, and the tax levy overall increases by 7%. Coupling that with the increase in valuation of 11.48%, it results in a decrease in the levy rate. Does everyone understand that? Okay. So that maximum allowable revenue limit formula for the general fund is the major factor in bringing us one side of the budget, the revenue side. Okay. As you can see here, the top 2 lines in the revenue are the allowable limited revenue. Those are composed of the tax levy and that general aid, and that makes up 87% of our district's revenue in the general fund. This year, we're anticipating a balanced budget with expenses matching revenues, both at $40,998,979. Okay. This chart offers a visual breakdown of that revenue, where that revenue comes from, highlighting the majority of our funding is sourced locally, with 51% from local taxes and 44% local taxes and fees, local sources, and 44% from state aid. Okay. Shifting our focus to the other side of that budget is the expenditures. You can see that our greatest investment remains our people, with salaries and benefits constituting a significant 69% of the general fund budget. If we include the transfer for special education, which is largely comprised of staff salaries and benefits for special education staff, the percentage dedicated to compensation rises roughly to 80%. Okay. Beyond our operating budget, we continue to prioritize long-term fiscal health through the Capital Improvement Trust, or Fund 46, which is guided by the board-approved 10-year long-term maintenance plan. Fund 46 is a key strategic financial tool established in 2017 to manage those long-term capital projects. And using this fund for capital projects is advantageous to us because it does not count against those shared costs that come up in the calculation for that equalization aid. Okay, that helps the district avoid those higher property taxes. So that slider that we were talking about between the orange and the blue boxes, how we control Fund 46 and the expenses in there helps a little bit with that calculation. The Fund 46 is guided by a school board approved 10-year long-term maintenance plan that we review every winter with B&G and the Finance Committee. Okay. This fund is crucial because it allows us to complete necessary maintenance projects and upgrades, such as the Webster roof, which we just completed this summer. Beautiful pictures of our Webster roof and our access points. Nothing glamorous, but things that have to be there, right? And then we also have in mind future projects for this fund, which include the CHS air handler, hopefully this summer. So yes, a nod. More roofs, and more parking lots, and more roofs. And then, of course, technology upgrades as well are part of that plan. Okay? So to conclude the presentation, let's quickly recap the key takeaways from the proposed 25-26 budget and financial review. So in summary, we're presenting a balanced budget for 25-26. Our general fund balance remains strong with a balance equal to 25% of expenses. The tax levy rate is projected to decrease to 6.25. We continue to experience positive enrollment growth with an increase of 5 FTE of our membership. Our capital fund, Fund 46, is healthy and growing with an expected year-end balance of over $1.96 million. And we thank you for all of your support and joining me tonight, and I'll take any questions. I have more details about this year's budget and last year's financials in the budget packet, which is posted online or available for you here. But this time I'll take any questions.
I just want to thank you for your detailed presentation and all the effort and all involved in getting us to a balanced budget. You know, it's a priority of the board to ensure financial strength for the district and allocate our resources appropriately, and with that, maintaining a balanced budget, which we have, so thank you. So we know how long of a process this is and all the details that you are involved in, and we just thank you for that. So is there anyone in the public who would like to ask Mr. Bell some questions? Board members?
I'll just second. Thank you for the presentation and all the work that went into it.
Yeah, thank you for helping me and helping the team as we made our way to this point. So
I have one thing that, just if you could briefly touch on it. So you talked about at the beginning of your presentation how there was I think a big increase for the health insurance. And it's kind of related to the budget. Can you just kind of give a brief overview of a change that we've made in the last year to the health insurance and how we hope that will help with costs, not a guarantee?
yeah, so last year we started out this year. Well, prior to the 2025, our health insurance renewal is on the calendar year, so not on the school year, fiscal year of July to June. It's on the calendar year of January to December. And so every fall, we review our health insurance renewal for January of the next year. And last fall, when we got our health insurance renewal estimate, we were fully insured. So that's just the idea that we go out and we find a company that will sell us in, family and single insurance packages, and we pay them a set amount of dollars to insure our members. All of the risk and all of the reward is on that insurance company. So that's a fully insured. So that's what we were before. And we had a number of years of high claims and honestly losses for our insurance company. And so the renewal that they were estimating was over 30%, I believe, and it would have cost us an additional $1 million. And so at that time, we went back to our broker and talked about the different options. And he provided us with the option of, it's not a fully self-funded plan, it's called a partially self-funded plan because it's self-funded in the sense that we are our own insurance company now, so we insure ourselves, but to a point. We have insurance on our insurance, so catastrophic or stop-loss insurance still exists so that we don't get too far beyond what we could take. But by doing that, we reduced our renewal from over 30% to 5% and saved about $1 million. And so we can do that because we had the fund balance that we had. We are able to cover emergency expenditures if they happen. If a large claim comes through, we can cover that. Stop loss will cover that as well, but even the projected aggregate stop loss threshold was at where our fully insurance renewal was. So it was, I don't want to say a no-brainer, but it was pretty logical to make that step. And the board worked through that process with me with special meetings and our broker to determine that that was the way to go. That insurance so far this year, again, has gone really well and is running below the estimate. And so we're able to have a 5% renewal this year again with hopes that we'll have a continued positive year. So.
Thank you. I just know that was really big change that you took on, and it has been a great benefit for the budget. And I believe that the teachers didn't have to make drastic changes to providers or anything like that. It was a pretty seamless transition as well.
Yep, changing from fully insured to self-insured was really a back-end change. We managed that change from the administrative standpoint, but the network and the providers stayed the same for the teachers. But that said, the teachers play their role too in making sure that they're conscientious consumers of our healthcare, and we've had a lot of increased engagement right after we did that. Then we kind of pushed out this we had nice healthcare before, but we made an extra effort to have nice healthcare. Teachers know how to use and go to nice healthcare, and we had great utilization in nice healthcare, which diverts claims from our plan, so that's helped too. And the educators and the staff here have just been really receptive to wanting to have a good health insurance figure too, so I give it up to them too for doing what they can to manage costs as well.
Could you explain when you say nice healthcare? It kind of
Yeah, sorry, I kind of throw that in there. That's like a separate, so we have like our regular doctors and office visits that we pay for in our health insurance network, and then we pay for this like remote clinic. It's a virtual clinic that we pay for, a set dollar amount per employee per month, so we pay for it whether or not we use it, but at a certain utilization rate, it ends up, they tell us, we can't actually do the specific math, but they say at above a 9% utilization rate, it's essentially paying for itself by not having employees go to urgent care or their doctor's office, and instead doing this app-based care. And NICE will also send their provider to you or to us here at the school district if they need certain tests or anything run, and our employees have really been receptive to that. They've said nothing but good things about NICE. They like it, so we continued it again this year. And last year in the winter months, when you think urgent care visits are high and things, we saw a utilization rate in the 20s, which is the highest that it had ever been for us. So that was good to see that people were really engaged in using that as well.
Thanks, Kim. I look forward to just looking at the presentation when it's added. The packet makes sense
tonight. Yep.
Yeah, the packet all makes sense. Can you just, for the sake of I took my notes, but I did not write down if you said we would talk more about the no additional allocation for general aid on Wednesday in relation to budgets coming up. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
We'll talk about that more when we review the 5-year forecast. For us, general aid went up this year.
Okay.
How that's impacting us next year might be a different story.
Right, I did look at the DPI list of all the school districts, I'm aware of some pretty large, just,
Yep, about 75%
differences.
75%.
Yeah, that's helpful, I just didn't jot down if that was a Wednesday thing or if that was a future thing, so thank you for clarifying that.
Any other questions? Connie, I don't want to interrupt you while you're writing.
Thank you for asking, let me just, I don't think I do, I reviewed the packet, I really didn't have anything, and the presentation is, I'm in the packet, but in a more digestible format, so I think it'll be helpful when it goes up there for anyone who doesn't want to read through the packet.
Aw.
But I like the packet.
Everybody's gonna read the packet.
Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Okay, well, with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn. I'll motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned. Motion passes obviously 5-0. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ken.